Hey everybody, welcome to this month's episode of Buy Dirt. This is episode 5, and we're going to be talking about wildlife conservation and management. My name is Jacob Lye. I'm the owner of Wildflow Land and Wildlife Management. We're a full recreational property development and management company. We specialize in food plots, controlled burns, forestry mulching, and specialty grading projects, such as building duck impoundments, ponds, cutting in roads. I'm also a broker with National Land Realty. I'm based out of Youngsville in Franklin County, North Carolina, and I work the Raleigh to Virginia corridor. Today we're on a track in Halifax County, North Carolina. So what is wildlife management? The definition of wildlife management is the science and art of balancing the needs of wildlife with those of people. What is conservation? The definition of conservation is the practice of protecting and maintaining natural resources such as air, water, soil, plants, animals, and energy to ensure they are available for future generations. As a consultant and wildlife and land manager, a lot of times somebody will call me, or I was lucky enough to help them buy the property from a real estate side, and we identify the property, we identify what it has, what it doesn't have, and then I ask the landowner what their goals are. And based off of what their goals are and what the property holds, we come up with a management plan. And then that management plan is helping us identify all the different projects that we want to conduct on that property based off of the landowner's goals and to help them achieve those goals. So what we first start with, most properties that we help a landowner on have pine trees on them, or are pine plantations, or have areas of pine plantations, loblolly pine primarily. The majority of the tracts in the area that I work in central North Carolina, majority of them are forested. So to make the biggest impact, we look at the forested acres first. We figure out if there's merchantable timber on that tract. We figure out if there is a way to get a commercial logging crew in here to pay the landowner for some of the trees. Normally we're doing a wildlife thinning. What we're doing is we're removing 40 to 60% of the trees. The landowner's getting money for those trees. That's allowing them to have more money in their budget for managing the property. That helps us get the biggest impact right out of the gate. And it doesn't cost the landowner anything if there's merchantable timber on the property. We're gonna try to do a little bit heavier thinning than your typical silviculture practice. If it's a hardwood tract and it's got a mixed stand of red oak, white oak, hickory, sweet gum, different hardwood species, we're gonna go in there and remove all the non-mass producing trees. What we're trying to do here is open up the forest floor to sunlight and allow more native grasses and forbs to grow across the landscape. A lot of times that's the biggest impact we can make on a property that's forested in North Carolina, or primarily forested or just a forested acreage. Allowing the sunlight to hit the forest floor and allowing those native grasses and forbs to grow is producing food and cover. And a lot of times we're getting a commercial logger or a timber buyer to pay you to do that to your property. So now your budget to manage, pay for, or do some of these habitat enhancement projects, you've got more money in the pot to help with that. And we've made the biggest impact right out of the gate. Second step would be controlled burns. When that understory starts to grow back after a couple years, it goes from being young, tender forbs and grasses to young tree species, we call it woody species, and we're gonna do a controlled burn on that landscape to reset it, start it over. And then we're gonna further diversify. If it's a big tract of timber, we're gonna burn different sections at different times of the year in a different rotation. Normally, we're doing a 3-year burn rotation. So the same piece gets burned every 3rd year. Right here behind us is an old drag trail that separates this block of timber behind us. Last winter we burned this piece. This winter we're gonna burn this piece. Then we start getting into our non-forested acreage. What acreage on the property doesn't have trees on it? It could be farmland. It could be a loading deck, just like what I'm standing in right now. It could be cut over. We're just trying to figure out what we can do with what we've got. If it's being farmed, we look at what's being farmed on that acreage. If you've bought a property and it's, let's say it's 100 acres and 25 acres of it's farmland. If that farmer is willing to farm, say they're primarily farming cotton, but they do farm a little bit of beans and corn, tell them that they can farm it for free if they just stick to a corn, wheat, bean rotation. Then you've got plenty of food. The cotton's not giving the deer that much food. They might put a cover crop of wheat on there, give you a little bit of food, but we're trying to maximize every acre that you've got. If it's farmland, let's try to make sure that that farmland is producing something that your deer and your turkeys and your quail can all benefit from. And if the farmer can farm that for free, that's helping him out too. It's a win-win. Old field management. Say it's maybe not the best farmland, or maybe you have a ton of farmland, or maybe there's one field tucked away in the back that the farmer farms just to keep it from going out of hand and growing up. Well, old field management is something that we can do to produce more cover and some food on a property. If you look behind me, it's a monoculture of pine trees here. We are on the schedule for a logging crew to come in here and do a thinning like I discussed earlier. But as of right now, there's not much cover in there. There's a 20-acre cutover on the way into this farm. That's where all the cover is. If you wanted to come in here and try to bust up a covey of quail, which I've seen quail on this track, or try to shoot a cottontail rabbit, they're gonna be in that cutover. They're not gonna be in this right here. So if we can get some open land to go into what we call early successional habitat, that's basically the best habitat you can have for bedding and for nesting. For turkeys and quail, for deer, for rabbits, songbirds. You want to diversify the habitat on your property. So when we come in here and thin this tract, it's a 200-acre property I'm on right now, we're going to do some patch clear cuts in the center of each block. That way we've got food, we've got cover, and there's creek bottoms all around here. We're checking off all 3 boxes so that deer and turkeys and quail can thrive on this tract. Lastly, we're going to look at food plots. So I'm in the food plot business, and I look at all the different mini projects that I discussed before I even think about a food plot. We're going to figure out how much food we need to produce. All those mini projects are going to produce some food. Then we look at what we have left. And if we need food plots, sometimes you don't even need food plots. I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying that, being in the food plot business. This is a loading deck where the last time they did some commercial logging on this farm, this is where they had all their equipment set up. This is where they were loading the tractor trailers with logs. We came in here and cleaned this up and planted it to clover and chicory. Just about 365, there's food in this little spot right here. Matter of fact, I killed a buck out of this food plot last week. We've got food, we're gonna have cover, and we've got water right down in the creek bottoms over here. So it's really simple. It's just can be complex because each property is different to get it to that point. Now we're going to talk about conservation best practices. Conservation best practices are being mindful of the natural landscape. There's different ways you can go about trying to do your best to conserve different things. One of the biggest things that we want to keep an eye on is soil. Soil is where all your organic matter is. That's where all your nutrients come from if you're trying to plant a food plot, or if you're trying to grow pine trees, or if you're trying to manage the understory for native grasses and forbs. The nutrients in the top few inches of soil is what's going to dictate how well or how not well something's going to grow. So a good management practice for conservation, if you're wanting to do food plots, is no-till. You can get a no-till drill. There's different implements where you can put seed in the ground without tillage or disturbance and allowing the opportunity. You know, this is kind of sloped down towards the truck. It slopes all the way down to a creek bottom. If I came in here and dissed the hell out of this food plot and then it rained monsoon the next day, the majority of this topsoil would end up in that creek. So now we've lost our topsoil, we've created erosion, and we've degraded the water quality of the creek down there, where all these deer and turkeys that we're trying to manage are drinking from. We talked about earlier, habitats, food, water, cover. There is a group, the federal government has an office called the Natural Resource and Conservation Service. They're in every county of the state. All those people are very highly educated on conservation practices when it comes to farming, when it comes to recreational food plotting, when it comes to commercial logging. If you are a landowner, I encourage you to meet with your local NRCS rep. Tell them about your property. Show them your property. They very well could be outdoorsmen and women themselves. I live in Franklin County. I'm real tight with Quentin Cooper. He works with NRCS in my home county, and he's a hunter and outdoorsman himself. He's a world of knowledge, especially to someone who may not know as much about this stuff. So I encourage you to get with your local NRCS office. They also have some different programs that you can conduct on your property where they'll help with some cost share. So it could be worth your time. The last thing I want to hit on with conservation is conservation easements. So there's different easements that you can enroll property that you own to basically pledge that you're going to always keep it in a natural state. You're not going to develop it, you're not going to turn it into a strip mall, you're not going to turn it into houses. This property right here actually has a conservation easement on it. You can manage pine trees, you can clear cut, replant, continue to operate it as a recreational investment property and timber investment, or you could clear cut and stump and grub and turn all this into cow pasture or farmland. You just can't develop it into a strip mall or homes, and they actually will pay you to pledge your property to that, or they'll give you some tax incentives. So if you've got a property that you feel very strongly about conserving and keeping it a certain way, and all the work that you put into it will stay there for the future to come, I encourage you to look into some conservation easements. You're welcome to talk to me about it. I do a lot of work with Derek Halberg with Tar River Land Conservancy, NRCS office, and there's some other federal conservation projects such as CRP or CREP program. Thank you guys for joining us today. Episode 5 of Buying Dirt. We talked about wildlife management and conservation. If you would, please like and subscribe. That way you'll know when our next video is coming out. We appreciate all the comments that you guys make. Try to keep an eye on those if you've got any questions. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can go to wildflowhabitat.com. My cell phone number is 919-818-4388. If you're looking to buy or sell a property, I'd love to help you. If you've got a property that you'd like to manage, would love to help you. If you've got some questions about something you're trying to do yourself, would love to help you. You guys have a good one.